It's time to pick a side. The border war is on the air with BG and TanMan.
All right, gang, welcome into episode 131 of the Border War. I am the TanMan. I'm joined here by BG, and man, we have got a great show planned for you guys today.
131. It doesn't feel an episode over 126.
Well, I was going to say, I was guessing 123, maybe 124.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Hey, here we are.
And there's that one show I did which wasn't ever recorded.
Well, we both did a show that wasn't recorded. A lost episode.
I did a show with a dude who wanted to be called TD. Well, as I remember, the show was about 2 hours and 12 minutes long, and then I looked down and hadn't recorded one damn minute of it. That wasn't
BG.
funny.
That is BG. You can find him on Twitter at BG_Border War. I am at Tar Heel TanMan. We're on Facebook. We're on whatever listening platform you like. You can email the show as well, BG. We've got a couple emails this week. The first one, Brent from Lugoff. He says, I love last week's episode, but you guys are way off base with the Gamecock season prediction. They will, in capital letters, will beat at least two out of the Alabama, Georgia A&M, and Clemson. He says he thinks they'll get Alabama and Clemson both at home.
Well, I was going to say, let me
large
have
limb there, Brent.
I was going to say, let me have some of what he's smoking, but I'm a teacher, so I can't have any of what he's smoking.
And Leslie from Apex, North Carolina. I am cautiously optimistic for the Heels this season. She loves the choice of Sam Howell at quarterback.
Why not? It's the same thing I'm saying.
That's a great
It's the same thing I'm saying with Dwayne Haskins, man. Throw him out there.
Yeah, everybody.
What else do you
Everybody acts like Cade Fortin and Jace Rutter were like these.
Yeah, right.
These veteran guys. Man, they played like a total of like three halves between the two of them.
And your goal is not your goal is not the South Carolina game.
Right.
Your game is the season and the future.
Yeah. Leslie goes on. She's not sure if that's going to be enough to beat the Gamecocks in about 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks, much less get to 6 wins. Says the year will definitely be fun, and Mac has got things going in the right direction. I agree. I think Mac Brown has got things going on a path up at North Carolina that is very different from the one they've been on for the last few years.
I think in retrospect it was time for a change. I do wonder, though, if North Carolina fans aren't getting a little bit ahead of themselves.
No, we're not.
Okay.
We're not.
All right. Well,
it's going to be amazing.
Let's introduce. We have a special guest today.
Yes, we do.
It's not your daughter, which is amazing. I mean,
it is
normally when we have a special guest, I could hear everybody saying, "Oh, he's got his kid on."
Oh, great! Yeah, she's going to come on. Yeah. No, this guy is a gentleman. If you're from around the upstate, you're pretty familiar with him. He has been on the. He has been a radio personality before.
He had a regular feature. When was it, Tom? Was it about 2011 or so that you were on once a week?
We did a podcast with Manny Robinson called The Letterman's Lounge. We did that for about 3 years. And then we're on weekly on the former Four-Letter Network in Greenville. And then me and Toby Earl had a show on in Spartanburg called The Home Field Advantage. And we did that for about 2 years. Did a daily every morning.
And there were times when you co-hosted Open Mic, too, right?
Say that again?
Didn't you co-host Open Mic Daily a couple of times, too?
I did do a couple of episodes of that, and actually won a couple bets with Mark Hauser and was able to host the show. He's like, yeah, day off and you get to work for me, I'll take that.
I don't even know if we can say those guys online. He's on air. He's in Oregon now, though, so it should be fine.
I was going to say, he probably doesn't get internet where he's at, I'm sure.
Anyway,
if you ever saw where he was at, you would say, that's a legitimate question. Can Mark actually get internet?
So, if you haven't already guessed, our guest
is a landline out there, guys.
Is Tom LeGrand, Furman graduate, former Gardner Webb faculty member. You are a PhD, is that correct, Tom?
That is correct.
So when I call you Dr. Tom, that's legit. I'm not just making that up. Okay.
At one time, his on-air name was Motorcycle Tom. Some of you guys may remember that. And so, what? I mean, that's I didn't even know he had a last name. I thought his last name was Tom.
Yeah, I just always referred to him as Dr. Tom.
So, Tom, what are you doing these days before we get into the world of sport?
I am the regional director for an organization called Impact America. They work with AmeriCorps, getting recent college graduates out to a service year or a service project year in different capacities in North and South Carolina. We do vision screenings for underserved communities and underserved children. And we also do tax preparation in Spartanburg and in Orangeburg for impoverished communities and people who really don't need to be paying somebody to do their taxes. We can do that for them.
Yeah.
And we work with Wofford College. We work with Furman. We work with Claflin College down in Orangeburg, doing these tax sites where people can come get their taxes done for free. Hopefully keep a little bit more of their money in their pocket.
Nice. Well, listen, we've got you on the show today. As everybody can probably tell, BG and I are somewhat familiar with some of your radio ventures in the past, and listening to you and then your show you've had recently, I have found you to be a guy with takes that are much more along the common sense line.
Yes.
It's not really, nothing really outrageous. Everything seems to be just pretty, pretty simple. Nothing too crazy. And so there was a story that broke last week. You're a Furman guy.
Yes.
We know that you support the Paladins through the good and the bad here somewhat lately. But a story
we're on the upswing. We're doing better than even Matt Brown is right now. We're on the upswing here. Okay. Sorry,
Matt Brown's undefeated in the preseason. I don't know how you could.
Listen, Dr. Tom, I know you're new to the show, but there's three things that we don't do on this show.
One of them's Tony Romo.
One is Tony Romo bashing in any form is not tolerated, but the other is North Carolina athletics and North Carolina academics. Those are three topics that will not be touched on this program.
Notice how all the things you can't talk about are his stuff.
Yes.
I don't care. You can badmouth my guys all day long. It doesn't bother me at all.
Tony Romo, like I said, Tony Romo, Tyler Hansbrough, those are non-negotiables.
Now, let me say, I did not get a list of do not talk about X, Y, and Z prior to the show.
Well, we haven't seen our producer in 2.5 years, so it's hard for us to get that stuff out there.
Well, like I said, we told you before we came on air, look, this is a very rudimentary production here. There's not a lot behind the scenes. But the story out of Louisiana come one of your former guys, Billy Napier, the former Furman quarterback, had this weird deal where he was actually having his players, making it mandatory, and I think they've since walked it back, but making his players contribute, I guess, to the booster fund down there at Louisiana Lafayette, or whatever they're calling themselves now. Like I said, you've kind of really touched on the whole college athletics, paying players, that sort of realm before in some of your shows. So just give me your thoughts on your former quarterback stepping the line, right on line. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I was really hoping nobody would bring up the fact that he's actually a Furman graduate. We're hoping that doesn't make it onto ESPN anywhere. We don't need that out. I think you answered the question. Now, okay? Keep it quiet. I saw that story, and it's funny because Julius Robinson, who's sports writer for the Greenville News, sent me a text with the article and said, "You may need to come get your boy." That's what he texted me. And I thought, wait a minute. We're requiring scholarship players to contribute back to a fund that gave them a scholarship to be a scholarship player at a university.
Mm-hmm.
And now you are correct. They have since come back and said, well, no, it's not required. But you and I know that not required has a different meaning in football than it does in a lot of other things.
Optional workouts.
Yeah, optional.
Right.
Basically, in any job, any walk, if your boss tells you, "Hey, Saturday's optional," he probably wants you to come in and work on Saturday.
Well, usually that means it's optional whether or not you come in, but then you can opt just to stay home on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week,
right?
When we're not going to pay you anything. And that kind of terminology is a little bit different because there aren't really optional workouts. There are you better show up workouts. Mm-hmm. And I would doubt that you can first say that this is a requirement, and they didn't deny that on Friday. as of Friday, they were not denying that it was being required of players. Now you're in a position where you say, well, it's not required, but I really expect you to do it. And you know, and I know, that with football players, if a coach says you need to do this, they're probably going to make every effort to do it or feel pressured to do it.
Right.
At any rate. That, first of all, I think it's going to backfire on them. The reason that Billy Napier is doing this is he's wanting to build a culture of the football players coming back, contributing to the program, staying involved with the athletics, similar to what has been done in different ways at other schools. Furman has the FFPA, the Furman Football Players Association, that's extremely active in fundraising for Furman athletic scholarships. So I understand the need to build that culture, but if you're having to require your players to give money while they're still in school and can't take a job and do not get paid for what they're doing, then I think you're having a real problem building the culture you want to build to have a Division I football program.
And I mean, I think it goes without saying, and I don't know specifically, but knowing what I know about Louisiana and the area around Lafayette, Louisiana, and the academics at that school and the size of that school, I'm going to guess that the vast majority of those players don't come from a whole lot of money.
That would probably be a pretty good guess.
And I think you're right. I think it's the intentions behind it certainly aren't nefarious, but
I think just the way he went about it is
right. It's
probably
just
the best.
Money is not it's not the only way those guys could contribute. If you want to build culture, I mean, do some community service, and I'm fine with making that mandatory.
Sure, and a lot of many programs, almost every program has some type of community outreach that they do. You know, get the players out in the schools, encouraging students to read, doing all kind of work like that. And that's great stuff that teaches them the same values that Billy Napier is saying he wants to instill in his players of giving back once someone has given to you. But at the same time, don't we have to say, I'm giving you a scholarship, I'm expecting your hard work and commitment, I'm not going to ask you for money back on top of that. Because some of these kids, $50 is a lot of money.
Well, look, $50 to me is a lot of money. I'm in my mid-30s. I mean, let me ask you this. Money, it seems like money and college sports right now is the go-to thing, especially when you talk about football and basketball. Like, those are the two big things.
Sure.
If there were a way that, you know, and I think eventually we're going to get there where we allow players to make money somehow. I don't think it's going to be the schools paying players or anything like that, but they're going to allow them to profit off their image or likeness or however you want to say it. If there was some way that they were able to do that now, do you think I don't guess major outrage, but do you think that this story would have grown the legs that it did for a few days where they had to walk it back? Like I said, if players were allowed to make money a little bit.
I think there are two issues that are going on, particularly with the University of Louisiana. First of all, if you need to do this to get your program up to speed, you probably need to drop back to FCS, which you may have needed to stay at in the first place. You know, everybody wants to make the jump, and the argument is if you can jump up a level, the financial benefits for the university, and I heard this a lot at Gardner-Webb as well, the financial benefits to being Division I outweigh whatever losses or whatever expenses you're having to incur to get there. I'm not sure. I heard that, but nobody ever could show me the numbers where that actually worked out that way. And so I'm not sure that we don't need to have a time when some of these schools don't have to stop and think, maybe this wasn't the best idea in the world for us. Maybe we need to drop back.
Well, so you've seen a couple, actually. I think Idaho was dropping back their football program. I think New Orleans at one time, and now I know they had the Hurricane Katrina, and that contributed to some of it, but I think New Orleans dropped all the way down to like Division III at one time.
They did.
Yeah. And I know that Idaho's dropping back again. And, you know, just being able to meet the minimum requirements to go up a level doesn't mean, just because you can, doesn't mean you should. And there's a lot to think about with that financial commitment that it takes to have a truly successful, competitive, money-making Division I program. And let's be clear, you guys know this all too well. Most of the schools in Division I don't make a lot of money off their athletic program.
No, they most of them, if they break even by paying for everything with football and in some cases men's basketball,
right.
But there aren't a lot of places where football and men's basketball make money. There's a lot of places where one of them makes money.
The 25 top programs, and you don't have much left. Those top 25, people look at Clemson and the money they've made, or Alabama. Those are outliers. Those are not.
Well, I think that stuff happens with money in sports across the board. I mean, you have, we talk about it on the show sometime about, NFL salaries, and you hear these,
sure.
your buddies who just resent every dollar those guys make as if the money would be theirs if they weren't making it. I mean, but they quote these salaries, and I'm like, you realize that isn't anywhere near the average NFL player. Well, that isn't anywhere near the average Major League Baseball player. And the same thing goes for college athletics.
Sure.
We've spent a lot of time on this show sort of expressing a sort of like fatigue that's built up in at least us concerning college football in particular. Not the game itself, but everything that goes around recruiting and everything else. And I think I'm so cynical when I see a story like this. I mean, I want to think that Billy Napier's a great guy, but I mean, I know who he used to hang around with in 2010. I know where he probably got some of these ideas. I mean, is this just one step beyond, like, no, I'll quit college football if we ever pay the players. Now give me my $78 million paycheck.
That's right.
But I'm so cynical that I just expect that this is all about image. And yet, backfired, but part of me says, man, he's just trying to look different in a world where no one does, and get somebody to sit up and say, hey, I like that coach's style. I want my kid to play there. Am I completely off base thinking that way?
No, I don't think you necessarily are. I don't know Coach Napier well enough to be able to say that he's that conniving.
I'm just saying he wore orange voluntarily. That happened.
That's right. That's right. And that's a problem for me on any level. Nonetheless, I think that everybody is looking for some way to get attention. It's almost like there is no publicity. There's no bad publicity. All publicity is good publicity. So even though it's kind of turned negative on him, maybe some big college looks at him and says, yeah, we like the way he's running the show there. We think that's cool. Let's move him up. Or maybe players are like, yeah, I like that loyalty. I like that commitment thing that he's got going on. And desperate times call for desperate measures.
And I think that's what I was getting at, is that really when you get right down to it, if he hadn't done this, we wouldn't be talking about Billy Napier at all.
Talking about Louisiana.
No,
that's right.
we would not. We would not.
And with good reason we wouldn't be talking about him right now. So I think that's part of the issue, is that everybody's looking for that edge, that angle, whatever they can do. And we might have to just come to the realization, not every school can do this. Not every school is going to be successful, and we're sold on this thing that, if you just put enough money into it, if you just work hard enough at it, you can be the big time too. Well, maybe not everybody's supposed to be the big time. And maybe there is some, and this, okay, you're about to hear, get off my lawn guy, old time.
we're both get off my lawn guys, so it's fine.
I'm an old man in training. I don't think I'm going to have to work that hard at it. But maybe there is a benefit to athletics that doesn't involve money, and maybe even doesn't involve going 11-0 every season, or 12-0, or 15-0. And maybe some schools need to just see that value as being more important than trying to become a big-time program.
Well, I mean, I think you see that. I think you see that at Wofford. I mean, as long as Wofford beats Furman, which they almost always do, I don't think that's a problem, right? I mean, it's still.
Oh my gosh!
It doesn't feel very good, does it, Dr. Tom?
Oh,
I forgot. Did I forget to tell you I'm a Wofford alum before we came on air? Did I guess I didn't mention that.
Well, you know what?
I don't mention it on the air very much either. Don't get me wrong. I don't actually go to their games, but
I've
got another sermon for you on that. If you graduated from Wofford, you need to go to Wofford games. I'm just going to tell you that. And then you can go this year and watch Furman whoop them in the last game of the season and win the conference championship this year.
Well, if that happens, we'll have you back on, by the way.
I appreciate that.
He can't. Let me just say off the microphone, we're never having this guy on again, okay? Just write that down.
Okay. All right. I'm jotting it down in the book of promise.
You did turn the mic off, right?
Pretty sure. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure how any of this really works.
I have been written down in the Border War Book of Life. I'm down. I'm done.
As soon as we go to Revco and buy a notebook, we'll have one. But yeah, that's not a thing now.
I don't even know what that is.
I don't think you're too young to know what Revco is.
I've never heard that.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, I'm older than you.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm older than all of you.
Well, I know. Well, at least you know what a Revco is.
I do know what a Revco is.
I know what an Eckerd is. It like an Eckerd?
It's like an Eckerd. Yeah,
Hey,
it's like Eckerd.
hey, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. Dr. Tom, you mentioned the no publicity is bad publicity. Let me just say, I fully subscribe to that. I'm a Cowboys fan. Listen,
you're the master of it.
Hey, whatever, as long as you're talking about us, as long as you're talking about Jerry Jones, whatever, hey, I am all good with the no publicity, bad publicity thing.
Yep.
Well, all I've got to say to that is, Ezekiel who?
Hey, it'll get worked out. Everybody,
I started to tweet out in reaction to that, but I couldn't quite put my words concisely into a tweet, so I just gave up. But everybody in the NFL is somebody who. Zeke needs to get off his high horse about being bothered by that, man. There's about 5 guys who have a permanent last name, and none of them are playing running back.
Correct.
I mean, that's just the way it is, man. That's just the way it is.
Has there been any position in the league that has changed more over the last 10 years than the running back position?
I've heard a lot of national guys here lately trying to make the argument that the running back position doesn't matter, and so then don't pay them. But I don't think it's that. We've talked about it on the show the past 2 years. I think the vast majority of teams that make the playoffs in the NFL have a 1,000-yard back. I think what doesn't matter is who your running back is.
Correct.
I think now, don't get me wrong, Ezekiel Elliott is an outstanding talent. He's probably the best back in the league.
Right.
But a guy that gets hit 25, 30 times a game, I'm just not paying him over a certain amount.
Listen, I said the other week, I would not acquiesce to his paid demands right now. Now, next year, maybe the year after, we can talk. I'm just not doing it now, but my question is, there are a lot of people that are going, I wouldn't pay him, never, no how, no way. Well, my question to those folks is, if you're not going to pay this guy, this is the best running back in football today. If you're not going to pay this guy, then no running back anywhere in the league should get paid, period.
Well, you better have somebody that can block before you have somebody that can run. That better be your first thing. And the second thing is, again, and I think that's a great point, it's not that running back is devalued, it's that the name running back is the big-time running back. We don't see a lot of Walter Paytons. We don't see a lot of Jerome Bettis-type guys. That name means something. Because there are a lot of guys who can play the position, who can catch the football out of the backfield, who can do versatile things. And so I think the running back position has just changed. It's not that these guys aren't any good. They're great. Le'Veon Bell is great.
It just seems to be more of them to me.
That's right. There are more guys that can do it, and they're not worth an $18 million a year headache to put up with them. Plus the fact that they break down so fast. And you know the statistics.
Yeah.
If you run the ball over 400 times, I think it's 400 times, I'm quoting this off the top of my head, in a season, inevitably your production begins to decline the very next year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Yeah. That makes sense. It makes sense.
Well, that long-term contract just becomes not worth it at that point. Because you're going to wear these guys out, and then they're not going to give you anything on the back end of that contract.
Well, you're seeing, I think part of the issue with Elliott is they're wanting the Todd Gurley money. They're saying Todd Gurley set the market, and Dallas is going, whoa, that's. I think it was Le'Veon Bell got paid after him. It's no, Bell is the new market, because you're seeing the Rams, like almost immediately as the ink dried on that Gurley contract, they realized we have made a terrible, terrible mistake.
Sure. Absolutely.
Guess what? Todd Gurley's hurt right now.
And I think he'll stay hurt probably for the rest of his career.
It could
He's,
very well be.
let's say he's 26, 20.
And he had a history of that at Georgia. He got hurt at Georgia.
Yeah, I think he's got like arthritis in his knees now, and he's in his mid-20s, and he's eating up a large chunk of your salary cap. So I think that teams are not in any big hurry to pay running backs.
Agreed. I could not agree with you more on that. That's for sure.
Now, Tom, you are a pastor as well as a sports aficionado.
I'm not doing pastoral work right now. I'm working with a nonprofit. But I am an ordained minister.
That's what I meant. That's what you are not a. You're not a pastor with a capital P. You're
a little pastor.
You're a
little P pastor. Yeah. And at 6'4", 255, little P pastors. That's the first time I've ever been called that for sure.
Okay, I didn't realize you were actually quite that big. So if you've been insulted by anything on the show, we were kidding about all of that. But just getting on to that kind of not a vein we touch on the show very often at all, but. I've noticed that there are certain programs in college football, maybe in college basketball, but I see it a lot more in football, especially in the South, that are more and more comfortable with sort of mixing Christianity in with their recruiting. Kind of visibly doing things and sort of and again, full disclosure, I am a Lutheran, I am a Christian, I go to church every Sunday, and I have very strong beliefs in my personal life about that. I don't really ever pour that orange juice into the milk of my sports beliefs, but I think I don't know why I picked orange juice. There are cranberry juice. Yeah, I don't know why I went with orange. There are certain schools that seem more comfortable with that. I was just wondering what your opinion of that is, or is that even a problem? Is it something I'm seeing that isn't really happening?
Well, first of all, you really messed up. You should have gone with grape juice because I grew up Baptist. So
okay, well I know I grew up Baptist as well.
We do the Welches. We don't do, the Manischewitz or whatever.
Yeah, I think we use the Manischewitz, which is
being a kid on Lord's Supper Day, getting that grape juice. I was the best, man.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't know what the word communion meant until I was about 22, because I had always called it the Lord's Supper. And I remember my first year of about 7th or 8th grade football, and this sounds crazy, but grew up Southern Baptist. And the team started saying the Lord's Prayer at the end of practice, and I had no idea what they were saying. I had never heard that before in my life.
Wow. Well, I will tell you this: the Lord's Supper is the best term for communion. So you were using the best term, but we'll get into that on another. That's a whole
a different podcast, man. I don't think we've started that podcast yet.
We'll do. I might get that one cranked up, and so then I'll have you guys on.
Sounds great.
But here's the problem that I have with this, and if you look at the South and the reality of the South, football and athletic stadiums have become our. And this is going to get me in a lot of trouble, our Jerusalem, if you will.
Yeah.
We go there every Saturday with an excitement and religious fervor that is really hard to match, even with NFL teams. And having lived in Pittsburgh for a while in a northern city, they weren't that into college football. It was NFL.
Right, right.
Here, it is all about college on a whole different level. The problem is with the mixing of religion and athletic fervor and almost a spirituality to it, those lines get very, very blurred. And we forget that certain coaches, especially in our neck of the woods that people love, they may be great coaches, they may be good Christian guys, but they're human beings. They're not to be worshipped. They're not to be held in such high regard that you have to put on the certain color of glasses and refuse to see them in the light of the fact that they're just people. They're football coaches, and they're out there to win, and they're out there to do whatever they can to get recruits into the fold.
Well, I know. I mean, I agree with you, and I've been really uncomfortable lately about South Carolina fans and how, they're constantly like, Will Muschamp is such a nice man. He's so friendly to the press. And it's gone too far. I mean, he's just a human being.
Right.
That was a joke, by the way. He's not really that nice to anybody.
He seems kind of a jerk.
Yeah, he seems kind of like a jerk. I
we
like
don't
my
know if
football
he's that
coach
good of a
kind of
football
jerky.
coach
Thank
yet.
you
We're
very
still
much.
waiting to see how good he is on the football field.
See, to me, I want my football coach to be kind of in the middle. Not really a jerk. I just want to be a regular guy. Like, I feel like Mac Brown's just a regular, nice guy.
Yep.
I think Mac does a good job of seeming very friendly.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't have
Yeah.
a problem walking right up to him. I would have thought twice about walking up to Spurrier if I'd seen him in an airport. I don't think it would have gone well.
Now, see, I think Spurrier would have been fine. Like, I wouldn't walk up to Muschamp in the airport.
I
What's
definitely
going on?
wouldn't surprise him from behind. He might get knocked out.
Well, do you guys remember a few years ago when Will Muschamp let go of a guy who's a friend of mine, Adrian Dupre, as the team chaplain?
I do remember that, and he wanted to more generalize the quote-unquote religion. I remember all of that, yeah.
And you know, Adrian has been a friend for 30 years, but Adrian is strongly evangelical. He's very heavily evangelistic in how he approaches things, and very much a black and white type of guy as far as this is right, this is wrong. And, you know, Will Muschamp kind of got skewered because he was saying, I want a guy who can talk to everybody from all walks and faiths and perspectives. The world we live in today, fellas, at some point, that's going to become more important.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've got a lot of people who are walking away from church and faith for a lot of reasons.
Sure.
And so I think you better learn how to talk to people. You know, you go into a living room, and let's face it, mom and dad want to know you're going to take care of their baby boy.
Right.
They want to know that you're going to keep them on the straight and narrow, and you're going to keep them righteous. And everybody in the South predominantly knows that language, that not coded, but kind of that under the surface lingo of spirituality and faith and good godly people. We know the terms. And so you can throw out a few of those and get a mom and dad to say, yeah, I like this guy. Whether you mean it or not. And I'm not saying all the guys don't mean it, but it's a recruiting tool. And some coaches in our area have used it very effectively.
I was going to say, sometimes mom and dad want $300,000 in cash, too. But, like, that's neither here nor there.
And let's not fool ourselves to think that just because someone says they're a godly person, that doesn't mean they're not going to do that in order to win ball games. And that's where I think the lines get very, very sketchy. Because then we're talking about, yeah, I'm talking all this God stuff, but when it comes down to it, I really just want to win ball games. That's as important, if not more. Let's look at Urban Meyer. Let's look at Jim Tressel at Ohio State.
Those are two examples right there, man.
Well, yeah, and you know, and I talk to people about this all the time when it comes up, and not normally something we get into on the show, but this is obviously a very different sort of show today.
That's right.
But you know, I think in America, like, we're so conditioned, you know, to think we're winning, right? We want to win.
That's
Americans want to win, and that's why I think sports are so big. But you know, Christianity and really all of the major world religions are not about winning. They're about helping losers.
But we've lost sight of that.
We want to go find losers. You know, Jesus said, "The losers are me," and like, that is so the opposite of who we are as a people and the way we think. That I think that's sort of what you're reminding me of, is that when you get into mixing religion in your sports, I mean,
sure.
and like Steve Spurrier, for example, his father was a Presbyterian minister his whole life.
Yeah.
And Spurrier was brought up in the church. And I'm not trying to hold him up. There are tons of coaches. I think that my understanding is that Bill Belichick's a pretty devout Catholic, but he doesn't.
I'm having a hard time believing that.
I was going to say,
okay. So, point being, there are some coaches out there that, I mean, I think they just keep that stuff out of it. That's sort of my preference, but I don't assume that I'm right about that thing. But when you do mix it in, you're still going to go out and try to find the best players and whip the other guy's tail, though.
That's right.
And
right. And keeping in mind, we're talking about state schools here.
Sure.
We're talking about state institutions. And we had this a few years ago at Clemson where they were doing baptisms at football practice.
DeAndre Hopkins.
That's right. You're flirting with some lines there. And I'm not saying it's necessarily, I'm certainly not saying it's a bad thing for a guy to get baptized, but why do we need to have the production of doing it at football practice? Why couldn't we say, all right, come to church Sunday night. If you want to come, we would love to have our team there to watch this guy get baptized.
Well, I think we already know the answer to that question.
That's
right.
I'm fine. Honestly, I don't have a big problem if, because football teams, they spend so much time together, right? They're always around one another, and what's the one word that always gets thrown out, especially around football? Family.
Sure.
That's right.
If that's who he felt comfortable with, and that's who he wanted to be around, I'm okay with that, but I don't think that it needed to be this whole huge production. Like, I'm fine if it was Dabo that actually baptized him, right?
I don't know that.
I'm not sure if it was Dabo or the pastor at New Spring Church.
Either way, I don't really have a big deal with it being done at practice. I just don't think that it should have been made into like this big spectacle and turned almost into a recruiting tool.
That's right. I think you can do it and even do it voluntarily without making it a production.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I realize how cynical I am, and I realize that I don't like Clemson. So, but when I saw that picture of Newt sitting in that tub, and he still had his shoulder pads on, in my mind, I'm thinking about people actually saying, "Let him leave his shoulder pads on." We want people to understand this is a football player. This is just not some kid at practice.
Right.
This is one of our players. Leave his pads on. Because
And why
I've
is
heard
that
those
more important than
conversations.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I've heard those conversations about other things in life, been behind the scenes and heard the kind of stuff that people plan to put out to the public and how, and again, all of that could be wrong. It could have been a very genuine moment, but I'm just, and I wouldn't have bought it from South Carolina either. I wouldn't have.
Right. There is a school of thought, though, and you see this a lot in some modern, and this is more in my realm than in the sports realm, but you see it in a lot of modern manifestations of Christian faith, that the end justifies the means. So if we can show this, and for DeAndre Hopkins, that may well have been the most sincere.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. I'm not questioning his devotion to it at all.
That's right.
Or
know him
necessarily
at all.
even the coaches, but I just really believe somebody behind all that
made sure there were press there, that it got tweeted out,
That's
that we
right.
saw it, and we kept that conversation going so we could say things like, when's the last time you saw a player baptized in Columbia?
Yeah, I actually worked with the guy, and we got together. We all end up having to train, once or twice a year together. So we were actually talking about this, and I have my theory that the Clemson train is kind of on the tracks now, but may not stay there forever. But he said, well, you know why Clemson's getting all these kids, right? Why they getting all these recruits? I said, well, they're getting kids that don't even visit campus. I mean, I think I can figure it out. He said, no. He said, they're getting them because Dabo. The parents want to send their kids down to play for Dabo.
And that is exactly what Tom was just talking about.
It's a real thing.
He is a football coach.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And he may be, and I've met him once, just very briefly, but seems like a terrific guy, and he may be the greatest guy in the world. But we have got to quit buying into this idea in Christianity and in faith that putting on the production is what really brings people around. It may get you numbers, but that's not what changes people's lives. You made a great point, and I did it in a sermon about a year ago. I said, Christ lost according to the world. Jesus was a loser. And I saw this lady in the back, kind of cock her head to the side, like, I'm wanting to see where he goes with this.
Yeah.
And I said,
I hope that was the name of the sermon in the bulletin.
Jesus is a loser.
I didn't quite go that far. So, I stayed employed there a little while longer, so I didn't quite go that far.
That's not what we're going to call this episode either, so I'm full of it.
I appreciate that. But, in the eyes of the world, he died a death that was shameful and had to be apologized for by the biblical writers after it happened. Now, we who are people who are Christians believe that ultimately God wins, but not in the way that we win in the world, by being more getting more attention or having people like us better or winning the way, because you mentioned that it's all about winning, and sometimes in church and in faith it's about winning. Look, we're better than you are. We got more people than you do. We have more baptisms than you do. But that's not really the point, is it?
Right.
It's not what we're supposed to be about. And maybe by the same token, at some point we have to realize college is not supposed to be about winning football games. It's supposed to be about teaching students and preparing young men and women, even in athletics, for a life beyond the field, because it ends for everybody at some point.
I tend to agree with you. I just think that the ship on that one has sailed, unfortunately.
I don't necessarily disagree with that.
I suspect that the coaching staffs of college football programs have been the way they are now since time immemorial. But I think what has changed is a college football fan. When I was a kid, I mean, you were excited to make a bowl game, and no one talked about the national title. I mean, it just wasn't really that much of a discussion. And now, in the world of social media, and I really do think that's what's changed, because you feel like your fandom it puts you on the defensive 365 days a year, 24/7. Everything's out there all the time. And people, in the South especially, because, until the Panthers came, there wasn't an NFL team. I mean, back then the Falcons weren't an NFL team. They were,
they were just around.
There were no NFL teams around here. People's whole identity was wrapped up. And let's be honest, I mean, the most rabid college football fans did not attend the university they pull for, and in many cases are only rabid about that one particular sport.
Absolutely.
They're not rabid about the golf team. They're not, they may or may not know what county that school is in, whether it's Columbia or whether it's Clemson. I mean, either one. And because people have inherited this sort of fandom, but they certainly don't, in many cases, stop to think about the university as a whole. And my line has always been to people, they're like, what team do you pull for? I'm like, I don't pull for a team, I pull for a school.
Right.
I pull for the school.
Well, and I've had people say to me, well, why do you bother going to Furman games? Why do you bother going to, that's just small-time college football? I'm like, yeah, but that's where I played college football.
Yeah, that's your place. That's your people.
Those are my people, and honestly, I wanted to go there to play football since I was 5 years old and went to RA Day when I was a kid and got to shake hands with some player walking out of Serene Stadium in 1976.
And you still remember that today, probably.
I do. I absolutely do. And so it's not about being a part of the production or the show for me. It's about I support my school, my team. I know what those coaches did for me. I want them to be able to do it for some other group of guys. And you made a great point about people who didn't go to the school who are fans of the school. Is it just me, or are they the ones who are the most violently defensive of those schools?
I think you're right. Especially look around the SEC when you see Tennessee and Alabama and some of those places.
South Carolina. Absolutely, South Carolina.
It's insane. Sure. Some of them are insane, man.
And I've got a buddy who's a Georgia fan who, other than the football stadium, never set foot on the campus. Calls me about the recruiting. Calls me about, they got this guy. And I'm like, yeah, fine, whatever. And, and was like, well, why don't you care? And I'm like, because I don't like Georgia. That's why I don't care.
And probably.
And I didn't.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just because I didn't go there, and I don't pull for them. And in fact, I usually want them to lose, mainly because of my buddy. But anyway, that's another story.
Probably can't tell you the name of the basketball arena. Just a guess.
Not a clue.
Dr. Tom, we are running out of time. The clock is winding down. Listen, man, we really appreciate you coming on. This has been a lot of fun, man. We'd definitely love to have you on again if you're available.
Guys, thank you so much. I always enjoy being on, and glad to be on with you guys, and we'll be listening for it later on in the week, man.
All right, Dr. Tom, we appreciate you.
Thank you, fellas.
All right, guys. Guys, that is it. That was Dr. Tom LeGrand. You can find him on Twitter at WorstPastor. There will be no fantasy football draft reveal tonight. That ran kind of long, but it was worth it.
That was worth it.
We appreciate you checking out the episode. BG and TanMan are out. We'll see you next week.